If you guys enjoy what I do, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps the channel and it's free and easy to do. Welcome to my channel where we cover the lore of Final Fantasy XIV. We cover the stories both big and small, the epic and the cute, the silly and the tragic. I hope you all enjoy the ride, and welcome to the Chronicler of Lore. While Y'shtola heads off to take full advantage of the opportunity to study the Void Gate, the Warrior of Light and Estinian stick around to help Vritra figure out the best way to use the treasure from the ruins to help out his people. It's the least you can do after you destroyed all of his guardians. While you and Estinian get started, on the 13th, an armored Voidsent sits on a throne and talks to four beings that seem to represent each of the four prime elements of earth, wind, water, and fire. They had sensed the Void Gate being open from your world, but since the portal is so small, it doesn't matter much to them. They've been planning something for 10,000 years, and it's almost time for them to act. Still, the fact that you were able to overpower the Cloud of Darkness, even though she wasn't at her full power because of the covenant that bound her, you winning that fight even temporarily means you're a threat. However dangerous the Warrior of Light is, the Black Armored Knight has no intention of delaying his war to redeem his star. I have an idea on who those five beings are, but I think I'll save that for another video. One thing I know is that they're going to wreck us in a trial or two in the not too distant future. Completely oblivious to the fact that superpowered weirdos are planning on causing you problems, Vritra puts you on the task of figuring out which groups would benefit the most if he gives them a handful of money. He'd go ask the people himself, but even though he's walking around in the form of a small child, people would still feel uncomfortable voicing complaints to their leader, so he figured they'd talk more openly to you and Estinian. Vritra sends you out to talk to Matsia and his people to see what they need, while Estinian heads to Palika's stand. When you're all done, you can meet up and discuss things. Kalzal's death hit Matsia's village hard. Since he's gone, it's been hard for him to sell his fish, but the people have been working together to keep everything working as best they can. Without the usual travelers coming through the area, none of the merchants are making any real money, and without their ships, they can't trade with other places. It's not hard to figure out what the people need, so the Warrior of Light heads back to Razat Han. Estinian makes it back at the same time that you do because that's how things work for some reason, and the people of Palika's stand are making things work despite the upsurge of refugees that came after the final days. Since they were always a community of hunters and gatherers, the jungle is still supplying them with more than enough food. But the majority of the nation survives off of trade, so Vritra figures that the best way to move forward is to get more ships and sailors. The dragon gathers up his main advisors and lets them know how things will go forward. Since his right-hand man died during the final days, the dragon will oversee the restoration of his nation personally. To start things off, he has to have his treasures sold for a more easily used currency. Then he will get the merchants back up and running with ships. But the children orphaned during the catastrophe can't be helped by just handing them some money. Fortunately, the Warrior of Light saw how the orphanage in Idleshire was funded by trading rare materials, so Vritra decides that as part of the new trade laws, anyone who uses some of his treasure to restart their business has to give part of their future profits to running the orphanage. And in honor of Kalzal, they named the new foundation after him. With everything organized, Vritra sends people off to get things started. It all gets set into motion right on time because Y'shtola's made it back from studying the Void Gate, and she wants to talk about what she's found. For all of his talk about putting his duty to his people over saving his sister, Vritra wants to know what Y'shtola's found out too. She figured out how the device Vritra's alchemist made keep the Void Gate sealed, but she hasn't learned how to make it bigger, and without the records from those same alchemists, it'll be hard to figure out. That doesn't mean she's found nothing, it just means she's going to take a long time getting to the point like most scholars. The first time the Warrior of Light had traveled between worlds, the Crystal Exarch had needed her to touch an item for him to use to latch onto your exact location before he could snatch you across the rift. That spell tore a hole in the wall between the source and the first and made a path that only you can safely travel across. That's very difficult to do on one world, let alone between two different ones, if how many times Y'shtola nearly killed herself doing just that is anything to go on. The process isn't any easier for Voidsent. The creatures are usually guided to the source by summoning rituals, but the creatures aren't brought over fully. The mages force open a void gate and pull the creatures' souls from the 13th and put them in the vessels like statues and such. It was similar to how the Exarch accidentally summoned the Scions, taking their souls and leaving their bodies behind. The only reason that your summoning worked the way that it did was because the Exarch was using the power of the Crystal Tower to enhance his own. Normally, very few mortals can summon beings so powerful, which is why you've seen mages give their own life energy to summon stronger void scent. It's easier to snatch souls and guide them across the rift into vessels. They won't be as powerful as they would be in the flesh, but they'll still do some damage, which means most of the void scent you fought are far weaker than they would be under normal conditions. When the armies of void scent came during the war between Alag and Mericidia, the scientists had guided the void scent across the rift, but the much more rare planar fissures are pathways that weaker creatures can use on their own to just walk over to the source. But it still begs the question of why there are only fissures to the 13th and not, say, the 4th or the 9th shard. Personally, I don't think those fissures are natural at all. They're probably tears made by stronger void scent who are doing exactly what Y'shtola is and trying to find a way to travel between worlds. Y'shtola thinks that figuring that out is how to solve the mystery of dimensional travel. And Vritra immediately guesses that the crazy Catwoman wants to start doing exactly what she said she wouldn't do and start working on trying to open the void gate wider so she can get to the 13th and figure out why it's so closely connected to the source. Vritra finds that idea to be horrifying since armies of void scent were waiting when he had gone through, but Y'shtola just sees it as an adventure, one that she expects you to take with her. Since you have been there briefly and fought with the Cloud of Darkness, she figures you could protect her. Granted, they all keep forgetting that the fight ended with you running for your life. That doesn't exactly count as a win. Granted, while she's ready to go to the 13th, she doesn't know how to unseal the gate without Vritra's authority. As long as you make sure that if you die, you won't take Razad Han with you, Vritra will unseal the gate for you. And while the dragon doesn't remember how they expanded the gate, the alchemists of House Daimir were the ones who oversaw the project. They had started doing their research with a void scent that had made it through the fissure, and after they studied it, they made an artificial void scent of their own that they used in the rest of their experiments. They were so happy with what they did that they gave their notes to the leaders of Sharlayan at the time, but instead of getting the praise that they thought they would, Sharlayan locked the notes up in the restricted section of their library, which means a copy may very well still be in the Numenon. That means you're about to head to Sharlayan. Since he's not exactly the reading type, Estinian heads off to let Murad know about the new orphanage, while you and Y'shtola head to Sharlayan. Unlike the last time, instead of trying to have Graha sneak into the restricted section of the Numenon, you and Y'shtola ask Scholarch Monashane and Alphino's dad Forshinov for a little bit of help. While the twins' dad still walks around like he has a large stick wedged into an uncomfortable spot, both he and Montashane agree to convince the Forum to let you into the restricted section, provided you tell them what you learn, because they are just as eager to know more as you are. Once the two of you are guided into the restricted section, you get to searching for House Daimir's notes. Y'shtola gets stuck reading one book, so you search around and find what you need. The book has a lot of information, starting with a very unique void scent, Atomos, which has the ability to summon other void scent from their world. The amount of void scent it could spit out of its mouth caused a lot of problems for the Radiant host when they fought. Since the thing was able to summon so many void scent, the alchemists captured a small one and studied it. They discovered that the Atomos had absorbed a planar fissure and it could make it expand and contract at will. They noticed that when it widened the fissure to let void scent through, it let out a special ethereal wave pattern that they were able to replicate using a crystal and a prism. They put that prism into their artificial Atomos, finishing their construct. Y'shtola feels stupid for not thinking of that because the Atomos and what it could do was well known by most scholars. When the 7th Umbral Calamity started, there were Atomos seen all around Eorzea. The things were extremely dangerous, which explains why Sharlayan had locked the research away. But now that Y'shtola has it, she can move forward with her project. So the two of you leave the restricted area before Y'shtola decides to read other books. She wants to start making the void scent, but she's not exactly good at building stuff. Fortunately, you know someone who will be more than willing to help you, Nadana. As soon as the elephant alchemist sees the book filled with forbidden knowledge, like a true scientist, she can't wait to read it. And once she does, there's no question whether or not she's going to help. She agrees even before she asks what you want to make the thing for. But when she finds out about the Void Gate, she takes it in stride. but she'll need to see the gate before she starts to work, because making mistakes on a project like this won't end well. Y'shtola has a few materials that she needs to gather first, but she was planning on heading back into the vault soon, so taking Nadana to see the gate won't be much of a problem. After you grab a bit of astrally infused water for Y'shtola's experiments, you, Estinian, Nadana, Y'shtola, and Vritra all head back to the ruins. Now by now I'm pretty sure you know that Estinian is one of my favorite characters, but the guy's not that bright. He is well aware of the fact that the Guardians of the Ruins belong to Vritra, and he was there when the dragon ordered for more to be sent after we broke the last ones, and as soon as you make it back to the ruins, Estinian destroys the new Guardians before Vritra can stop him. This guy's lucky that he's cool, because he's definitely dumb. Nadana had never expected to find such a high-tech device beneath the bounty, and she's a little salty about the fact that Vritra hadn't told her about it. But the best way to keep something secret is to tell as few people as possible, so him not telling her made sense. Y'shtola has more important things on her mind than Nadana's feelings about not being included. Some reports from Noah, the group that G'raha formed when you all studied the Crystal Tower, reported that short trips into the void aren't all that dangerous to the individual's ether. But if you get injured or stay too long, you can be corrupted extremely fast. But G'raha thinks that the warding scales that were used to protect from tempering could hold off the corruption, but Y'shtola would rather not use herself as a test subject, so she wants to send something else through first, a small familiar. Y'shtola can summon one, but she didn't really want to since she made the ritual when she was a child, so the summoning and the change in her voice is so out of character for the woman that Estinian outright thinks she's been possessed.
From ocean rise and cloudbank form, from mountain spring and rainfall storm, from river flow and life be born. Water, froth and foam!
It is kinda hard to picture a young Y'shtola, so I can kinda understand his feelings. She summons two tiny water sprites that look familiar if you remember the second boss in Matoya's Relic, which would also explain why Y'shtola says something about finally getting revenge if you take her into that dungeon as a trust. While the ritual did nothing for Y'shtola's dignity, her two sprites will make perfect test subjects. One she puts a warding scale inside, and the other will have to take the full brunt of the void's corruption. It is possible that something not so friendly can come out of the portal with the familiars, so you and Estinian get ready to protect Nadana if something follows the Nixies. When Y'shtola calls the two sprites back, the one with the warding scale is fine, the other one is definitely not. From the other side of the portal, Vritra hears something screaming at the gate to open, and imps start to force their way through, but the dragon manages to seal it with a bit of effort before that happens. The good news is that the warding scale did protect the Nixie, but the corruption of the 13th is so strong that the scale itself was being eaten away. But it was built to fight tempering, so it may need to be remodeled before it can be used on the corrupted shard. Estinian still doesn't understand much about the other shards and the corruption and such, because he joined your little group officially after the whole get sucked to another world thing. So Y'shtola lets him know how the 13th shard was a reflection of the source that was consumed by a flood of darkness when the Ascians messed up their first attempt at rejoining the shards. The world became a place of monstrous creatures, but you've met two people from there. Unakalai, the weird boy who you worked with when you dealt with the Warring Triad, and Silva, the bartender from the Crystarium who had been the Shadow Keeper. Unakalai had said that the Warriors of Light of the 13th had used Auracite to wield the power of primals, but the Auracite eventually corrupted them and turned them into ether-hungry monsters. By the time people rose up to fight them, it was too late. The shard had been thrown off balance, and the light was snuffed out, leaving the world in darkness. Elidibus had rescued Unakalai's spirit and Silva's, which means he could have taken more people from the world that you haven't met yet. There's a lot that you don't know. And from what the Warrior of Light saw during her own short trip into the world of darkness, the place is extremely dangerous, which is the reason why Vritra doesn't want you to go through with your plans. But this is only the first step in Y'shtola's much larger plan. She wants to see all of the reflections, and this is the first step. Now that she knows what she needs, she has to find a way to strengthen the warding talismans, while Nadana gets started on the artificial Atomos. Of course, she will need a few more bits of paperwork from Vritra's archives, which the Satrap is willing to give her, although he is a bit distracted. Something's bothering him, and Estinian can see it. The Dragoon is more interested in figuring out what's bothering the dragon than going into the void. He's not even sure he will go with you at all once the gates are open, but he'll discuss it with you later, once he's taken care of some business that he won't tell you about, because everyone just loves keeping secrets. So that leaves you and Ishtola to figure out how to strengthen the warding talismans, and there's no question of who you're going to ask for the help. If you need something built, you go to Sid. When you show the very old looking 34-year-old engineer the talisman and tell him what you want, he comes up with a way to put a casing around the talisman that shouldn't interfere with the ether protection that it gives you, but it'll take time to get it working. You'll probably get Nero's help, since the man did a lot of studying on the corruption of the 13th since it nearly killed him. But the hardest part will be avoiding all the other work that Jesse wants him to do. With that started, the two of you head out to Thavnir to see how Nadana's coming along with the Atomos. The Alchemist has found some useful stuff in the dragon's private records that showed the purchase of some very unique materials that she is positive are what is needed to make the Atomos. Once she went to the High Crucible to show what she needed, she got a lot of other alchemists to volunteer to help with the entire project. Well, they didn't so much as volunteer as order her to let them help. How dangerous the job is doesn't matter to them, they just want a challenge. Vritra wishes he could throw caution to the wind and dive headfirst into trying to save his sister, but he has responsibilities and he can't abandon his people for his own personal project. Apparently Estinian figured that was the problem, so he went and told Vritra's personal guard and his staff and everyone else who would listen about the Satrap's sister. And all of the people agree that he's dedicated himself to them for centuries, putting their needs before his own, so they wouldn't be worthy of his leadership if they couldn't hold the city together while he goes to rescue his sister. Knowing that his people are okay with it, Vritra in his smaller form will leave the city and have to rely on his supporters to run things while he travels with you to rescue his sister. Once the Void Gate is open, of course. Since the dragon is going, Estinian will be joining you and Ishtola on your trip into the Void. One that, as we all know, will definitely turn out to be more dangerous than we anticipated. This concludes the story of patch 6.1, Newfound Adventure. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe, ding that notification bell, join the Discord, and if you really want to show your support, you can buy me a coffee through the link in the description. Until next time, guys, later.